My name is Danny Chan, and I'm a core engineer at Corona Labs.
So what are expansion files?
Expansion files. So it's this one big file that hosts all your resource files, like your high resolution images or movies or things like that. And then it puts it into one binary blob so that it separates the APK, which is a runnable bit, from the resource bit. So when you update your runnable bit, you don't have to. So the user doesn't have to download the big giant um, resource blob again. So it sort of separates it, so it's easier for the user when you have an update.
Okay, so
Right.
there's a 50 megabyte limit
Right.
on hard limit by Google.
Right. On APK files,
Okay,
which is why we need them. Yeah.
well, what you're saying is there's also an advantage to having them separate in that you can update the actual application itself without actually having to update the resource files.
Right. 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 So that's. I think that I don't work for Google, but I think that's why they did it like that, right? So that when because I think the belief is that normally the uh, images and movies and stuff they're pretty static and you don't really change them too much. But it's the actual logic behind whatever you're doing that changes. So that so if you separate them, then you can just update this one part, which should be smaller, with and then you don't have to update this big giant thing ever again. If yeah, so
So give me, if you would, a high level overview of how the expansion files work. So give me sort of the end to end process of how the thing works.
so what happens is that the developer writes their app in Corona, and then they reference all their resource files and everything, right? So just a normal workflow, and then in the build.settings file, you put in that uses expansion files setting to true, and then if it's targeting, if you build for Google Play, then it'll make this expansion file. Otherwise, I believe it will not make this expansion file because the other stores, Amazon, Nook, they don't use expansion files. They don't enforce this 50 megabyte APK limit, right? So if you're targeting Google Play, it makes it, and so you would have two things at the end: the expansion file and the APK, and then you would upload both of them to Google servers, and then an end user would download the APK, and it would normally Google would normally download the expansion file for you as well, and that and then what happens is that in the under the hood of Corona, we will read from the expansion files whatever resource you need. So you don't even have to worry about putting anything extra in there. So we read it as a stream out. We don't um, unpackage anything. We just leave it there and then we read it from this expansion file directly. And then from there, we just let the user do whatever they want with this resource that they used. Is that
Yeah, no, that seems simple enough. And so under the hood, we're doing things like checking for network connectivity and making sure that they have enough storage space on their SD
right?
card,
So
things like that.
yeah, so when what happens is that when you start up the app, um, Corona will actually check to see if your expansion files are there, if you actually need expansion files, if you don't have expansion files there, then if there's enough space to download the expansion files, if things like that. So we check all these things for you, and then we start downloading the expansion files if they're not there. But we also, if we already know the expansion files there, we skip all that checking and then just start up the app. So there's a very, very minimal, if at all, delay to starting up your app if you use expansion files and the expansion files are already there.
Okay. And do we provide any sort of dialogues to the user, or how does that work?
So if you need to download the expansion files yourself, as in letting Corona download it, we have this download screen already pre-made that's packaged in there. So we will download the expansion files. There's a little screenshot of it on the blog post, and then which notifies the user when the download is done and all that good stuff, um, and then it'll download it for you, and then start up your main.lua for right.
Okay, excellent. No, that sounds like it's very helpful to be able to do that and have it all kind of handled for you, and all you really have to do is worry about having the resource files there.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about having your resource files there because when you start your main.lua, it should be already there.
Mm-hmm.
So theoretically, you shouldn't have to worry at all about having your resource files there.
So what format are the extension files in?
It's called OBB. It's Object Binary Blob or something. I forget. OBB. Let me look that up. File type. It's file. Opaque blind binary blob.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Yes, yes, yes.
And how does somebody create these OBB files?
There's a command line tool you can do if you were doing it by yourself. But then in Corona, you can just say in your build.settings file, use expansion files equals true. Under Android, and then there's use expansion files. It's in the blog, but then once you do that, the simulator will automatically package all your non-Lua files into this blob.
Okay.
And then they can just use that.
So you put all your files into your project, all your resource files into your project, and then it does it for you automatically.
Right.
Okay, that's handy.
Yeah.
And who hosts the files? Where do they live?
So what happens is that the developer uploads the APK, and then they have this expansion file, and then they upload both of them to Google servers.
Okay.
And then what happens is that the user downloads the expansion files, downloads the APK, and then usually when you first install it, it'll download the expansion files automatically as well. But then if something funky happens, like you wipe your SD card, which is where the expansion file lives, then that's when we need to automatically download it again, right?
Okay.
So then, what was the question again?
Where do the files? Where are the files hosted? Like who?
Google servers. There we go.
Yeah. No, that was a good answer. I like the whole having the whole story. But yeah, I mean, it seems like that's the natural question of, okay, if I create these files, where do I put them?
Yeah.
And who handles that?
So, well, when I was testing it, I noticed that the first time you upload the APK file, it doesn't let you upload the expansion files as well for some reason. Maybe I just glossed over something, but then so you have to upload a second APK file before you can upload the expansion file. So that was kind of weird.
Huh. And the second APK file is just your app again?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Except you need a higher version number, or they don't let you upload it, or something like that.
Okay. I wonder. Yeah. So I wonder if that's just something a glitch in their process, or maybe if, like you said, you just missed a box when you were doing it. Okay. So on the device, where are these files stored? You mentioned the SD card. Where?
Right. So on Android, there's this external storage directory, which is sometimes the SD card. If you don't have an SD card, it might be some other place in there. Even if you have an SD card, it might not be on an SD card. So there's this Java function called get external storage. And then you can use that, and then that tells you where that is. And then in external storage, you have a folder named Android, and in there, you have another folder named OBB, and in there you have another folder which is your package name, the package name of your APK, and in there you actually have your expansion file. So there are multiple layers.
Okay. So by default, do we try to put it into the SD card, and then if we can't put it in there, then we stick it someplace else? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it depends on where that get external storage directory thing points us to, but because sometimes even if there is an SD card, it might point you to somewhere else, and if there's so it really depends on your device.
And so is that path set by the individual on the device, or does it depend on, I mean, like the manufacturer, how the manufacturer set it up?
It's like the manufacturer of the device.
Okay, interesting.
I
So,
think,
okay. But as a developer, I don't have to worry about that. It's already taken care of for me.
right. You don't have to worry about that at all.
Is there ever a point where I would need to know that or be concerned about that as a developer?
Yeah, when you want to test out your expansion files before you even upload it to Google servers, right? You actually might want to know where that place is so you can put your expansion file there and then test it all out.
Oh,
Right?
okay. Okay, because in that case you would be manually putting the expansion file where it needs to be in order to test everything.
Right. You can do that, or you can just directly upload it, and then because you can actually do a test account, or not a test account, but you can test it from Google servers, and it'll download it before you even publish the app. It lets you download it,
Uh-huh.
and then it just puts it there automatically, so you don't actually have to know where it is as long as you just upload it to Google servers.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
something.
So you can kind of reverse engineer the process in your,
Right?
in your
Yeah.
testing. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
So now on that, what if you do need to update this big giant thing? How do you do
You
that?
can. You can update it, but it's just according to Google's documentation, they say this shouldn't be updated. You can update it, but just update it as little as possible.
So the best option in that case then would just to be to repackage your resource file and just replace
Right.
it on their servers with
Right.
that.
Right.
Okay. And I was talking with Matthew Chapman the other day, and I told you this earlier that he has a bar exam app, and so the app itself has all the logic, like you say, to be able to handle, what state are you in, and administer the questions and stuff like that. But then when he has resource files, he's got MP3s and PDFs and all this other stuff that he bundles all those up. They're large. And even though he's compressed them down and tried to get them as small as possible, it's still he covers he still covers the nation. So he's got lots of files, and it's a lot of stuff. So I can imagine if at some point he needs to update those MP3s or something changes, I don't know how often the bar exam changes, but if he has to change something, then he would need to upload a whole new resource file to change that out.
Yeah. You would.
Is it possible to have, is there a case where you'd have more than one resource file, or does it just bundle it all up into one?
Yeah, the main one actually has a 2 gig limit, and then the patch also has a 2 gig limit, I think.
Okay.
So we can have 2 expansion files, and then the patch one is the one we don't support. So there's a main and the patch, right?
Okay. I was going to say, so if you're going to do it, your app is going to be 50 meg or less, and then the resource file has going to be at least 2 gig or less than 2 gig probably.
Right, less than 2 gigs, yeah.
Do you know if there's a limit as to how many times you can update your expansion file? Is that an issue?
I don't think there's a limit.
Okay. Yeah, it wouldn't
Yeah,
seem like that would be a very smart thing for them to do. I mean,
yeah,
you never know how many times a resource file might change. So, but I can see,
yeah,
yeah, uploading 2 gig, pushing 2 gig worth of data up the pipe every time you want to update your resources could be a pain.
yeah,
But I guess that's just kind of
exactly.
the price of doing business because no matter what, you'd have to do that anyway, right? I mean, whether it was bundled as an expansion file or it was actually bundled in the app, if a change is a change, you got to push it. So
Yeah, you need to change. So what are you gonna do?
okay. Now you mentioned earlier having high resolution images, and you could put
Mhm.
these would be put into your expansion file. So is it um, let's say that my app is not greater than 50 meg,
Right.
and I use these settings, will it still put that into an expansion file? Will I
It
have
will. It will.
okay. So I
So
could
if
I could make my app as just the logic and package and put all of my supporting resources into an expansion file.
right, exactly, exactly.
Okay, so even if I don't have a 50 meg limit, I could still take advantage of this.
Right. Even if you don't hit it, it still will do that for you.
Okay, awesome.
Mhm.